camera. All right. Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I am driving a 1995 Dodge Caravan. Up front is a 3.0 liter V6 and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now I am super excited to be driving this Dodge Caravan for one main reason. This is the final year of the second gen of Caravan. I haven't driven this specific model year yet. I did do a 1991 Plymouth Voyager, which is the same generation, is gonna share a lot of parts with this, but that was sort of the beginning of that generation. This is towards the end. This is actually the final year, which also marks the final year that they were using a modified K platform for the vans. So this is kind of a monumental year, but also there's just something about Dodge Caravans, Chrysler Town & Countries that just really scratches that nostalgic itch in my mind. And so throughout this video, this isn't going to be the most showroom perfect quality car to drive, but that's okay. And I'm going to talk about why. If you would like to share your vehicle with me, it could be rusting through the floor or showroom perfect, you can head on over to my website, zackbradle.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out. I come out to you, and all makes and models are welcome. Let's get back to that 3-liter V6 under the hood. Well, right off the bat, don't be fooled by the intake manifold. This is actually a Mitsubishi V6, making 142 horsepower. Chrysler was pretty heavily involved with Mitsubishi during this era, not only with their Eagle brand offering the Talon, which was a rebadged Eclipse, or the Chrysler Conquest, which I've never filmed, / Mitsubishi Starion. This Dodge Stealth was actually a 3000 GT that was rebadged. They had a lot going on together, but it actually goes further than what I always remember, and that's with the engines. This is a Mitsubishi V6 and shares a lot of the parts. However, the owner told me he wanted to make note that you can tell on the engine which parts actually come from Mitsubishi and which parts were added by Chrysler to make it work, because the Chrysler parts are like 13 and 15 millimeters, while the Japanese Mitsubishi parts are 10, 12, and 14 millimeter bolts. So kind of a funny distinction there. Like I said, paired to it, 4-speed automatic transmission, and this car is on its 3rd automatic transmission. Chrysler 4 speeds of this era, whether that be the LHS, whether that be the Chrysler New Yorker, no matter what it was, they were pretty doggone terrible. And so this is on its 3rd, praying that it can hold on to this one for a little bit longer. Last but not least, the Caravan is front-wheel drive. So how does it feel to drive a Dodge Caravan from 1995? Well, first of all, visibility is great. We're still coming off the back of the 1980s. Rollover protection wasn't as heavily enforced, and so you get really thin A-pillars and fantastic visibility. However, vans, even in the modern era, tend to have pretty good visibility as it is. Steering is good, throttle is good. Like I said, that 3 liters actually kind of zippy. And it does have rear leaf springs in the back, so you will notice that sort of stiffer ride. However, it's not the end of the world. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, up in front of me, I do have a little information center. This is where you'll find your warning lights. Chrysler was really interesting in where they were putting this information center back in the 90s. I say this because I recently drove a Chrysler LHS, and the information center was in the center above the radio, which was just weird. So up above the gauge cluster it is here in the Caravan. Down below we have the gauge cluster. So we have the tachometer and speedometer off to the left, oil pressure, battery voltage, fuel and coolant temperature off to the right, what gear I'm in, all of that sort of info. On the steering wheel, we do have horn buttons to the left and right, but then we also have the cruise control at the very bottom. Very weird placement here in the Caravan, but definitely cool to see, and it does still function. Off to the left, we have a climate control vent and our headlight switches, hazard switch, running lights, and dimmers, as well as down below this unmarked button. This is actually the trunk release. It's just been worn off over time. And moving out of the door, we have lock and unlock, latch to get in and out, power windows, and power mirrors. Moving into the center, we do get a little cubby with the Caravan badge on it. Love to see that. An aftermarket radio, because the older radios tend to go out on these, and so you have to get your tunes somehow. To the left of the radio, we have a very interesting collection of buttons for the rear wiper, overdrive off, defrost, and then a blank switch. Kind of an eclectic little group. 3 symmetrical climate control vents. Very interesting there. Climate controls themselves: high, low, temperature, where to send it, 12-volt outlet, very simple area right here. Then we do have a pull-out ashtray and cigarette lighter, along with pull-out cup holders. So we will do a big friggin' bottle test. It does not pass. I didn't expect it to, and actually 1995 is the benchmark year for the big friggin' bottle test. Nothing older than 1995 has ever passed, ever. So par for the course with the big friggin' bottle. Then we get a really big cubby down below that, and we get no major center console. So your right knee is free to dance as much as it wants. However, on the contrary, up above on the ceiling, we do have dome lights and several little cubbies for glasses, knickknacks, whatever, as well as our left and right vent. Love to see that. Really reminds me of the same year Oldsmobile Silhouette that I reviewed, which I'll be leaving at the end of this video. Now, the seats are actually from a 1992 Caravan ES. So these are not the original seats to this interior. You might see everything else is blue, and then these are gray with red pinstriping. So these are pulled out of another Caravan, but a Caravan of the same era and same body style nevertheless. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats. So let's go do a back seat review. All right, so I'm kind of in the back of the 1995 Dodge Caravan. It is not as spacious as I thought or hoped, and I can't seem to find any form of adjustment. So we're stuck with this. I can't even really swing my legs over. But interestingly enough, as you might notice, I don't have a door over here. I have an ashtray on the door. I have cup holders. The only door for the back space is on the passenger side. This was for safety back in the 1990s. The Astrovan did it, the MPV did it from Mazda and GMC/Chevy respectively. This was kind of part of that era, so kind of interesting to see, but not a ton of space. However, there normally would be a third row. This one has it removed. This was a work truck or work van for quite some time. And actually, this was purchased off of a local in Northern Illinois here, sandwich shop. This was their delivery vehicle for many years. So kind of interesting there. But let's hop out. We will take a quick look at the cargo space now that there is no third row, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, around the back of the Dodge Caravan. There we go. Had to unlock it from the key fob. And once we are back here, obviously this has been gutted. However, you do get these little pockets over here for some nice storage, bolts and things. Like I said, this is a service vehicle. The owner has a bunch of old vintage cars, and so he uses this to get around that sort of stuff. Obviously, love these like old emblems and stuff like that. Nothing really crazy to write home about in the back of the Caravan, but hey, here it is. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and obviously this one is a little bit more, well, worse for wear, I guess to put it. It has special patina. It's been seasoned through many a Midwestern winters, which, as I'm sure you're aware, are rather brutal. And so this car has been clinging on to life ever since. But it's here today, and it's clinging on to life for this video, so I love it. And I think overall the styling of it is just kind of iconic. When you think of minivan drawn up by a kid, this is kind of what you picture. So it has a charm in that regard. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving a 1995 Dodge Caravan? Well, first of all, the driving experience has actually been pretty good. The V6 is powerful enough, it's zippy enough, it handles great, drives great. You know, you wouldn't picture that by looking at this car, but it actually drives really well. And the owner, Carl, actually came to my summer cruise. I had a sack lunch cruise earlier this year where I invited everyone out. You can see it on the channel. There's a whole video about it. I invited everyone out for a cruise, and he drove this thing several hours that day and kept up with sports cars on the twisty roads. So hats off to not only this van, but Carl for piloting it through that. But I've actually really enjoyed my time with it. But I do want to talk about the Caravan as a whole, because I think this is an interesting piece of Chrysler's history. Well, this van was built off a modified version of the K platform. The K platform was started in the late 70s for the early 80s and was a single platform that Chrysler built pretty much all of their vehicles off of, at least most of their economy moneymaker cars. It was the bread and butter of Chrysler, and it actually brought them back from near bankruptcy. That, and with the acquisition of the Jeep brand when they bought AMC, pulled them out of their rut of the 70s and made the 80s actually pretty profitable for them. And so this was built off of that one platform that they reused time and time again. Modified, of course, leaf springs in the back and things like that, but underneath it shares a lot of underpinnings with this Chrysler LeBaron or this Plymouth Reliant K car. But this is the last year of that, and so this symbolizes and signifies the end of that era of Chrysler. However, with that era came more financial scrutiny. Chrysler was running out of money again in the early 2000s. And so this is kind of where the money was still okay, at least in the early development stages of this car. By 1995, it was dicey, but when this car was actually developed in the late 80s, early 90s, they were still doing pretty well. This is the last Rockefeller to actually have any spendable money. In 6 short generations, the Rockefeller family seems to have gone broke. And I also just have to say that this is a beautiful testament to Midwestern culture. These used to be all up and down the streets, and now they're getting harder to find. Driving this Caravan brings me so much nostalgia and warm, fuzzy feelings. Not only because that heater is working overtime here today, but also the gauge cluster is nearly identical to my Dodge Ram's gauge cluster. I had a 1998 Dodge Ram, and I would wake up every morning in bitter winter at 6 a.m. to drive to school. I remember the feeling of it, the sound of it, and this van brings that back, the warm, fuzzy feelings. And today, to pull the curtain back just a little bit, today is November 1st. This is the first cold snap we've had of the season. From here on out, it's going to be cold. And 2 days ago, it was sunny and I'd wear a sweatshirt anywhere I went, but now I had to break out my winter coat. And there's something about the cold in the Midwest that actually makes me feel more home, more welcome. You know, driving this car makes me think of driving away from my grandparents' house on Thanksgiving, and it's bitter cold and I'm so stuffed I can't even see straight. This car makes me think of January 1st growing up, the day after New Year's, and looking at the world in a slightly different view just because the date had changed. This car reminds me of the football practices, sneaking away to the car just to get 36 seconds of warmth before the next play, or driving home shivering, soaking wet from the disgusting November rain. But it's those little moments, those dirty, gross feeling moments, whether that be overstuffed, overtired, or overly cold. It's those little moments that I reflect on the most. That's when I felt most human. That's when I felt the most alive, the most normal. And so driving this car here today, this van, yeah, it's a little rough around the edges, to be kind, but it's so human. This is what Dodge Caravans have become. I can drive a pristine Dodge Caravan here on the channel. And if I ever get the opportunity, I promise you I will. I would love to show you a factory fresh one as well. But that doesn't paint the whole picture. This does. This paints a very real, a very guttural, a very actual picture of what these cars are and what they've become. And so today, this is what the Dodge Caravan is, nearly 30 years after its release. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Carl for letting me take out his Dodge Caravan. He has been a wonderful asset to the channel, such a lovely guy, and I just was so excited to show this car off to you here today. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, subscribe if you really liked it. But I hope today you reminisce a little bit, maybe get a cup of hot cocoa. Maybe you reach out to an old friend you haven't heard from in a while, just to say hello. Life is a funny thing, and sometimes our memories are all that we have. So give them a call. I don't think you'll regret it. Take care, guys.